Yo, what is up guys? It is Ivrea and this is the complete guide to manga quality. We are going to take a detailed look at everything that every manga collector should know when it comes to manga and its quality and materials. We're going to go over different bindings you will run into, the difference between paper brightness and paper whiteness, as well as uncoated paper versus coated paper, things like ink snap and ink cold. Then we're going to talk a little bit about American publishers, what to expect from these publishers in terms of quality. I'm not going to talk too much about subjective things like cover design and all that because it is more subjective and I want to stick to stuff that we can objectively look at. I'm also going to talk about other editions in other countries such as Spain and Japan specifically. Japan because it's the basis of which all editions kind of stem from, and Spain because it is something that I collect and it has an interesting case in regards to their quality standards that I think is important for us as American collectors to really take a look at. My goal is of course to inform you guys, but also to shed some light on things that I feel like we can improve on in terms of manga quality standards, but I will talk about that in the video. I did include chapters, so if you want to skip to certain areas, you can go ahead and do that, but also just for reference, as I'm sure many of you will be coming back to this video to look over, as I feel like this is very important for every manga collector to know, because as you're going to hear me talk about in the video, you know, things like paper quality is a big deal when it comes to trying to build a long-lasting collection. To kind of explain it shortly, lower quality paper, of course, yellows a lot faster than paper with excellent quality. So this is a big deal. I'm not trying to be disparaging. I make these criticisms because I know we're capable of improving, because I know there are publishers out there that are making better choices when it comes to quality, and I also want to give credit to them, which I do in this video. So anyways, let's get started with the video. Let's talk about book bindings real quick. Generally, there are two types of bindings you will run into with manga: traditional bindings and perfect bindings. Traditional bindings are what you'll usually run into with many hardcover editions. They are what you traditionally see in old leather bindings with some minor differences. Traditional bindings are comprised of signatures, which are then stitched together, then bound with glue, and then glued onto book boards with what are called end pages. The benefit of this binding is the integrity of its build. You can open it up wide open without having to worry about the spine or it falling apart. It is malleable and long-lasting. The best kind of traditional binding is what you see here, where signatures are stitched into cords, which are then glued directly onto the book boards, but you will not see these in modern hardcovers unless they are handmade by bookbinders. If you see cords on modern hardcovers, they are usually fake and purely for aesthetic, as most hardcovers are stitched together by machine without any type of cords. These little bands on the top and bottom of the books are known as end bands. Normally in modern hardcovers, they are purely ornamental and not hand sewn. True end bands are sewn onto a piece of cord, which is then sewn through these signatures. Perfect bindings are what you see in 90% of manga. They too are comprised of signatures, except instead of stitched together, they are only glued. The problem with these are of course longevity. The glue can sometimes give out, and repairing them is difficult. There is also issues of spine cracking, among other things. It's also important to note that there are two types of perfect bindings. One uses EVA glue, and the other uses what is called PUR, which is a stronger glue that lasts longer and allows the book or manga to open up a lot wider. I suspect that the majority of manga is bound with EVA, but it's very hard to tell unless we know for sure from the publisher what they use, and unless we're out there doing stress tests, we're just never really gonna know. When it comes to manga collecting, there are generally two types of paper that you will run into: coated paper and uncoated paper. Let's talk about coated paper first because it's a bit more straightforward. Coated paper is essentially that glossy, slick paper you see in some special editions, such as Fullmetal Alchemist Full Metal Editions, as well as Soul Eater Perfect Editions. It is paper coated with material, typically clay, that makes the ink absorb differently. The ink is absorbed on the outer coating instead of the paper itself, which makes for faster absorption and also a shinier and more crisp and vibrant finish. Coated paper provides a better ink holdout, which is called ink snap, where fine details pop out more and ink appears more bold. Uncoated paper, on the other hand, does not have that coating, and as a result, absorbs ink much more, resulting in a more porous and warm finish. Each paper has a different whiteness and brightness rating. Whiteness is essentially how white the paper is. A paper with 98 whiteness rating will typically have a blue tint to it, which helps the paper appear to be more white. Brightness, on the other hand, is how much light reflects off the paper. A paper with 98 brightness rating would be really bright paper with a lot of illumination, also making the ink appear more bold. North America and Japan uses a brightness rating system called TAPI/GE, while Europe uses ISO brightness rating system. There is also smoothness level, smooth, linen, laid, vellum, and super smooth, just to name a few, that affects the ink hold. The smoother the sheet, the more even the ink lay. Uncoated paper is what you generally see in most manga published everywhere, but their qualities vary greatly between publishers. Comparing two editions of Vagabond Volume 6, on the left you have the Spanish edition, which uses coated paper for its color pages, and the right is the US Viz edition, which uses the same uncoated paper that Japan also uses. You can see the colors on the coated paper are much more vibrant, and is why it's very popular when it comes to printing color. Here is Solo Leveling, a full colored manhwa printed on coated paper. The end result is stunning and premium. Let's take a look at some uncoated paper differences between two US editions. On the left, the paper has a rougher, more brown and newspaper feel and smell to it. On the right, you see a whiter, silkier, and more vibrant paper with excellent ink snap. It has also been confirmed by some collectors that the higher quality the paper, the less likely it is to yellow. For example, here is this City Hunter volume that is over 20 years old, but because it uses a relatively bright white paper, it has stood the test of time. Of course, keeping it away from sunlight and storing it does play a huge role, but even under the best circumstances, manga with low quality paper is going to yellow at a faster rate. I won't get into yellowing too much in this video. East Coast Manga has an excellent video on it, as well as a buddy of mine named Opmain has an interesting video kind of showing a solution for minimizing yellowing while still being able to enjoy having your books on display. There is also paper weight, which usually corresponds to the quality of the paper. Here we compare the weights of the Japanese version of Innocent and the Spanish version of Innocent Rouge. You can see that the Spanish version, despite being thinner, is significantly heavier. And as you would guess, it does indeed have higher brightness and whiteness, and thus better ink display. And here we have potentially the worst potential quality you can get with paper and ink, which usually come in these Japanese weekly magazines. As you can see, the paper is extremely newspaper-like, has terrible ink hold, and is extremely rough. You know, these editions are not meant to be collectibles, they are meant as promotional items, showcasing the latest chapters, and really just to get you to buy the manga, so it's why a lot of Japanese people throw these away, but it is a fine example in showing what manga looks like under the worst possible circumstances. Even among white paper, we bring up another issue, which is translucency, which brings us to my next topic, ink. On the left, you have a paper with high whiteness and great ink snap, but as a result of being a bit thin, we get a bit of bleed through. On the right, we have high whiteness and high ink snap, but a thicker paper is used, thus having one of the greatest finishes you can achieve with manga. As mentioned before, high brightness levels can also help the ink appear more bold, so if an ink ever looks really bold under light, you can assume that the whiteness and brightness is at play there. But the absolute best ink hold is hands down coated paper. When it comes to great print quality, the paper smoothness, paper brightness and paper thickness is going to play a huge factor on how it appears. Sadly, high whiteness and brightness is uncommon in the US. I'll talk about that a little more when comparing standards of quality between different countries. Moving on to size, when buying manga you will see all sorts of different sizes. In Japan, the smaller size is usually what you see in standard volumes. In the US, we tend to enlarge native formats to bigger sizes. In nearly all cases, special editions and omnibuses for manga will typically be larger in size. Size should always be considered when taking price into account. Take for instance Ajin, which is quite notorious in the US for pissing off collectors with its expensive price yet small size. Readability can also be an issue for many when reading larger formats. A large volume is not easily read in every position, and of course is not as portable, and blowing up a manga's native resolution may also sometimes not look the best. Take for example Halftone Printing, which is essentially an image comprised of dots, a technique to preserve ink. An image will then have a DPI, a dots per inch, and when enlarging that image, the dots become more apparent. We run into this issue with manga as well because of some of its shading techniques. When blowing up a manga to a larger size, a publisher does not raise the DPI/resolution, making the dots more apparent. Of course, we cannot expect publishers to do this because they would have to redraw and reshade stuff. Personally, I do not mind this. I prefer to have the larger format, but I know it does bug some people, so it's an issue to keep in mind. Not using the native size and resolution can also cause cropping issues, but usually a good publisher will fix this issue by adjusting the layout properly, but not always. Let's now get into covers and dust covers. In Japan and some other countries, manga almost always comes with dust covers. In the US, it is extremely rare that you will run into editions with dust covers. These are, to my knowledge, the only 2 editions I know of that have dust covers in the US. Dust covers bring a whole new dynamic to manga. A cover can be removed, sometimes revealing a new cover design underneath, sometimes with different artwork, which is always great. Although sometimes the cover design is not always the best. In rare cases such as One Punch Man volumes 19 through 21, it can be used to piece together a poster, which is very clever. Not everybody likes dust covers. There's a lot of people that hate having to take it off every reading session or the rounded look of the spine. It's also very susceptible to shelf wear, but this can be easily alleviated by either removing the dust cover, pulling the dust cover slightly up when putting it away, or placing it in a baggie so friction is no longer placed on the cover itself. There are even translucent dust covers, which are very rare. Dermae Romae Volume 1 does have a translucent dust cover, which is honestly fantastic. And also the Spanish edition of the Full Metal Alchemist Full Metal editions, the Kanzenbans, have double dust covers, where the first dust cover is actually a translucent dust cover, which, similar to Dermae Romae, you have the title and the number and the publisher and all that. From what I have heard, these are very prone to scratches, creating a foggy look, so it seems like it's going to be a love-hate relationship with these type of dust covers, but I think they look fantastic. Covers in the US, you will run into a variety of finishes and textures. The typical one that you run into is the glossy laminated finish. These type of laminates are susceptible to peeling off if not taken care of properly. Then there are also finishes such as the ones with Death Note Black Edition, which has a significantly soft feel to it, almost feeling cushiony. In rare cases, you will even get embossed surfaces, which essentially are raised surfaces that make shapes and patterns that stick out of the surface. A great example is Maisan Ikoku, that unfortunately I do not have with me, but as you can see in this photo here, it has a fantastic pattern and in person it feels extremely nice and premium. This makes for a great segue to our next topic, which is ornaments and finishes. There are a variety of finishes and ornaments that bring a unique personality to an edition. There are embosses, which we just talked about. Laminates, probably the more common ornament, which is that glossy look that you see on a lot of mangas. Foil finishes. Holographic foils, which are similar to foils except they refract light at an angle and give it a rainbow look. And you have special papers like onion paper here, and even full foil paper, as you can see here in the Spanish special edition of Bastard, and in some rare cases there is edge gilding. This traditionally was actually used with gold to prevent yellowing and decay of the paper, which is very interesting. Unfortunately, from what I can tell, it doesn't really work with what they use on these specific editions of manga. I think it only works if it's gold. Alright, now we're going to talk about American publishers. I won't be talking too much about out-of-print stuff like Del Rey. I think that's better suited for a different video where I go into detail about the type of quality you can expect for certain editions. Nevertheless, let's go through them. So let's start off with the main publisher. Now, Viz is kind of seen as the reason why we have low quality standards for paper in America, for how long they've been around and how long they have essentially been the big dog of all publishers. You know, they do have amazing editions like the JoJo's, but you know, they don't fail to cheapen out on the paper. I can definitely appreciate the end pages that they use. Most of the time, you will not see that. So, you know, you gotta give credit where it's due. Also, they have some amazing editions here, which open up finely. You don't have to worry about spine cracking. They're a large format, and generally, these are amazing. They always feel like a great buy. You always feel like you get your money's worth, you know, for what it is. But hands down, my favorite edition by Viz is the Full Metal edition. It's got foil finishing, has this little laminate design there, and you know, beautiful coated paper that is just fantastic. It's honestly amazing, and I love the hardcover matte finish on this. You know, there's no dust cover, but you know, for hardcovers, I don't really mind too much. I like no dust cover on my hardcovers for whatever reason, but that's just a preference thing. So Yen Press is like the, I guess I'll call them the queen of dust covers, because they're the, as to my knowledge, they are the only publisher to release any manga with dust covers. As you can see here with the Bride Story, which is such a lovely addition. Even the end band that they use is very, very nice. I don't know if you can see that there. You know, the paper quality is what it is. Probably some of the cheapest paper quality that you're gonna find. But for what you get, it's amazing. The dust cover itself as well is very beautiful. For sure, probably, in my opinion, their best edition, which is Dermai Romai. I'm trying to say that in a Latin way. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it in Latin, but I'm trying it. And as you can see, it's got the dust cover, but not only that, it's got coated pages, which is just lovely. It's just amazing. And Dark Horse is kind of hit or miss, but generally I would call them the kings of special editions because, of course, the Berserk Deluxe Edition, the Hellsing Deluxe Edition, Blade of the Immortal Deluxe Edition. I mean, they are the only publishers doing, to my knowledge, the only publishers doing leather bindings, which is amazing. This is real leather here. Even their omnibuses can be pretty high quality as well. Take, for instance, Blade of the Immortal here. High brightness with the paper. It's thick. There is no translucency at all. But then you have stuff like Crying Freeman, which is out of print and old, but I mean, you know, it's not the best. Now, Kodansha pisses me off. They, you know, when I first started getting into manga collecting, I was like so excited. I was like, I'm gonna get Love Hina, you know, it's amazing. They have these, you know, omnibuses, and I was just so excited. And, you know, I'm into bookbinding, so I'm aware that you have to be careful with these type of editions of manga or any type of book, right? So I was careful, and even being careful, it still cracked on me, and it's a nightmare. Like, look at this. it's just awful. And of course the page quality is just terrible, you know, it really is. And it just sucks because, you know, Love Hina, I love Hina, and I'm forced to either get this or the awful Tokyo Pop editions. They're all going to be yellowed. They're all going to be in really bad condition. It's really unfortunate, you know. Other countries, which I'll kind of get into a little bit later, we're going to get into standards of quality between other countries. When they released their omnibuses, they did it in special editions, and they're beautiful. They have amazing dust covers, high quality pages, of course, and it's just a shame that Kodansha's, you know, when they release omnibuses, it's like, you own the licensing. Spend a little bit more time to present it in a lovable way, you know, because really people are going to see this, they're not going to want to buy it. You know, even me, when I didn't even know about, you know, crazy quality, I knew that this was bad quality, you know, so it's unfortunate. It's not always bad with them. They have probably one of my favorite editions of all time, which is the Sailor Moon Eternal Edition, which is just such a lovely edition. As you can see, it is 100% coated paper. You know, I haven't had any issues with, you know, spine cracking at all, and it's just fantastic. The cover itself is very high quality, it's very thick, and it's got a foil finish, which is very rare in a lot of manga editions, even in special editions, which is very, very nice. So, you know, they're capable of putting out good stuff. They're just kind of, I don't know if they're just afraid to invest quality into a series. With Sailor Moon, obviously, it sells really well. It's a classic. They're more willing to do that. You know, other countries are taking that risk, and it's paying off for them. You know, they're selling well, and they're continuing to push out high quality editions. Then we have Seven Seas, which has been impressing me as of lately. I haven't been buying too much of Seven Seas, but since I started to get more stuff by them, I have been quite impressed with them. Take, for instance, Die Dark here. I just recently got this, and I am honestly blown away by the quality. It's extremely thick paper with high brightness, which is just incredible for Q Hayashida to have great paper that is gonna have great ink snap and bring out the details in it, which is fantastic. And it just feels so premium, and it's nice and heavy. You know they're using heavy paper on this. It's just fantastic. And of course, there is one of my favorite editions for one of my favorite manga, Devilman. It is just fantastic. The papers are, you know, somewhat translucent. They're like on medium thickness, but the paper is fairly bright. I don't think as bright as Die Dark, but nevertheless, it is great. I mean, they used uncoated paper for the colored sections. It would have been nice to see it with a coated paper, but nonetheless, it's a great deal. Normally, I mean, you can find these on sale for most of the part, and it is just fantastic. I love this edition. It's great, definitely worth the money. Then we have Denpa, which is a bit of a smaller company. They're newer, but their quality is pretty much the same as Viz. So it just goes to show that even a small company can produce quality to the same standards of a huge company like Viz. It just kind of shows that we should expect more from some of these bigger publishers. Then we have Vertical Comics, which I have a love-hate relationship with Vertical Comics because they have some of the best spine designs as well as cover designs, but they use almost all the time, it seems like they just use like the cheapest quality paper possible. You know, this Arakawa Under the Bridge edition is, you know, lovely with coated paper used for the color pages. Excellent binding. You know, you can look at that. You can just open it up. It's very creamy, similar to that of the Viz Sigs, which is awesome. But the paper is just very on the economical side. But they have, I'm telling you, it's a love-hate thing. They have Blom, the Master Editions, which were so close to being potentially my favorite edition, even though it's not hardcover, even though it doesn't have dust cover, whatever. It's just that there's the issue of peeling that people run into. Even if you just have it sitting there, it'll just start to unglue, which just sucks because this is an amazing edition. Just look at that. It's incredible. Easily, so far, the best edition that I have run into by them. But like I said, It's just unfortunate with the peeling issue. And as far as out-of-print manga goes, I'll only touch upon Tokyo Pop, just because it's something that you're likely gonna run into quite often. And you know, Tokyo Pop is honestly just horrendous with their spines specifically. Like, they should have kept it at this, but for whatever reason, they decided it was gonna be a good idea to start using this just awful logo there, which is it just sucks. Even for the time when they were still in business, they had really bad paper quality for the most part. I think their best edition for sure is, from what I understand, something recent, and that is Aria the Masterpiece. And really what this is the special edition that you find in Japan, so it's not something that they thought of themselves, but nonetheless, you know, I think they did a good job bringing this out here. You can see the foil finish on that is very, very nice. And it's got onion paper. They use coated paper for the colored pages. Well, at least for this one. Then it kind of goes into uncoated. And the paper is relatively, I would say it's like about medium brightness. Definitely better than the average paper you see in the United States. And speaking of Tokyo Pop, I did want to bring up something that is amazing. They're not really a publisher per se, but it is Right Stuf, and their recent efforts in republishing old out-of-print manga, which is God's work. And not only are they republishing old out-of-print manga, particularly with Tokyo Pop licenses, they are doing it with high-quality paper. And I didn't even know this was a thing until I bought Cowboy Bebop, and it just felt so new and fresh. It was nice and heavy, and I was just like, what in the world? And as you can see, high brightness paper, which is just spectacular, and I have to applaud Right Stuf for what they're doing. They're a big dog in the business of manga. It's just amazing that they are using money in the right way, and as a matter of fact, they are actually republishing this edition, Aria, the Masterpiece, in a limited order, and they need a certain amount of orders until they're able to kind of follow through with the reprinting, and I think they're about 60% right now, and you guys have to go 100% and support this effort by Right Stuf, because this is a step forward in what could be, you know, a better future for manga in America, because like I mentioned before, higher quality paper means slower yellowing, which means better collectability and just all in all a better experience when reading manga, but most of all, just having a finer manga volume. And companies are 100% capable of this. In Spain, 100% of the time, they do not use any of this type of paper here at all. If they ever did use it, it would be scandalous. So what I've been told is from very early on, the Spanish consumer, basically they all demanded for them to continue using these type of white paper. Every single publisher uses high brightness paper, white paper. And, you know, we may not be able to get all publishers to kind of commit to this paper, but I think if we can get one publisher, we can reward them, show them that we appreciate it by buying their manga and supporting them. We can potentially show other publishers that, you know, this is something worth spending the money on. So guys, definitely go check out all the stuff that Right Stuf has republished from Tokyo Pop. It's definitely worth it, guys. Trust me. Definitely go pre-order this. Dude, look at this. This is so nice. You're gonna get this. And right now in the aftermarket, these go for like $100 a volume. It's insane. So it's definitely worth it. Definitely worth the price, especially the pre-order price. You get entered into a raffle to potentially win a giveaway, which involves winning the anime DVDs, I believe. Should you decide to pre-order this, I do have an affiliate link in my description, which does help support this channel. And it also helps me know that you guys found this video useful and you enjoy the content, which I do want to thank you guys who have been using the link from the bottom of my heart. Thank you guys. Anyways, let's get into quality standards from other countries. Specifically, I want to start off with Spain because, as you're going to find out, it is a very, very interesting history that they have with regards to their quality and all that stuff. So I guess I will start off with what is my favorite publisher and what I have found to be of the highest quality, and that is Milky Way Ediciones. It is just very, very nice quality. I love that their spines are very flat, meaning that they cut it very finely to the size of the volume. Unlike, say, something like this that is extremely loose, you see that? It just shows that they didn't really like measure it right, and you know, it ends up making the spine a lot more round. And I love that Milky Way so far has just made everything has just been beautiful like this. And of course, they use really, really thick paper. The ink snap is really, really nice. I have had some issues with cropping, but it's not anything crazy. And you can see here, the foil finishing. It's very subtle a lot of the times. They have a logo, but they don't just slap that onto their volume. They'll change it up, which I really, really like. Second best, I would probably say, is Norma. And you can see the paper is probably even brighter than Milky Way, at least in this specific one. But not just that, they come out with excellent editions. I don't know if they added this extra or if this is how it came in Japan. I'm assuming this is how it came in Japan as well. But it's good that they kept this because they don't always keep the finishes and ornaments that Japan does. And you can see the paper is very nice and bright. And they add a little postcard here, which is lovely. You know, showing love to Tsutomu Takahashi. They just added this, they didn't need to. And I think that's really cool for a publisher, right? Is to kind of shine light on specific mangakas, especially someone like Tsutomu Takahashi that I feel is severely underrated. And then there's Arechi right here, which has kind of blown me away with their quality as well. Very nice finishing, very subtle laminate there, which is very lovely. The dust cover is cut excellent to size here, and you know, the paper quality is fantastic. I mean, the details just really shine on Hojo's artwork here. So I plan to get more stuff by Arechi because they're almost on the level of Milky Way. But other than that, you know, everything is kind of around the same quality. Glenat is interesting. They're kind of like the Tokyo Pop of Spain. I believe they're originally a French publisher. You know, they're kind of like Tokyo Pop, where you see them on people's shelves and you immediately know, like, oh, this person's, you know, an OG collector, or they can appreciate older editions. Similar to Tokyo Pop, the spines are kind of awful, but I do like how they kept the foil finishes on their manga, and the paper is nice and bright. Just all in all, excellent quality for being something that was released in 2008. This was published in 2008, so you know, the quality still holds up surprisingly, you know, especially for something that is such an old publication from an old publisher. Panini is, you know, solid quality. I don't like that the logo is a little bit big there, but other than that, you know, whatever. ECC, I have had some issues with their rainbow. You can see here, this is not supposed to be there. These like artifacts, the way the shading was kind of printed. I don't know what happened in the process, but there are various problems with this. Other than that, you know, they're really nice quality. Like, this is even higher quality than Rainbow. The brightness is just really, really nice. Great stuff, great stuff. But then we have Ivrea, which I think is probably the worst in terms of quality, but even their worst is still pretty damn good. Like I mentioned, you know, their spines are really round. They're not the best designs, but they do kind of take extra steps to better a specific release. For instance, these colored pages are coated, and in Japan they aren't coated. So, you know, they do preserve the size of the original release in Japan, but they do add a little bit of extra stuff to kind of give it a little bit better quality. The pages, all in all, are still really bright. I don't think they're as bright as other ones, but the print just comes out fantastic. This is really, really nice. Then we have Planeta de Agostini, which is interesting because they do something that I think really, really puts into perspective the differences between something with a dust cover and something without a dust cover. Because on their popular titles, they have a specific edition for their first volume that doesn't have dust cover. So it'll be similar to the ones we get here. It'll be no dust cover, and the cover will be printed on the actual physical cover here. And they will price it at under €2. And they do this as a kind of promotional tactic to try to get you hooked on a series so you buy the rest of the series, which is honestly really brilliant for them to do that. But it's just interesting that it equates basically to under $3. It's like a $2.50 volumes, and they're selling that retail at that price. So it kind of sheds light on the type of margins that US publishers are potentially harboring with their manga. Obviously, the size is smaller. It's going to play a big role in the cost, but nonetheless, to go from €9 to under €2 is pretty insane. And I think that's cool that they do that, you know, add a little budget version so you can kind of just get hooked on it. But yeah, I mean, this is pretty much it for the Spanish editions. One interesting thing is that they do opt with releasing the special editions for certain manga, specifically for Witch Hat Atelier. It did come out with a special edition that came out in Japan. In this one, this is the 7th volume special edition. It comes with a little calendar. And of course, they have it translated and everything. And, you know, I think that's just amazing work. One of the things they do, of course, is also have these little extra things, and they almost always provide bookmarks, which, you know, in the US we do sometimes too, if you buy directly from the publisher. As the story goes, from what I've heard, is that early on, a publisher made a decision when first bringing manga to Spain, you know, to print it on high quality paper. And ever since then, from what I understand, is that the people in Spain that were buying manga demanded them to continue using that. So now it's just a standard. And it is pretty much confirmed, like I mentioned before, that these type of higher quality papers do yellow a lot less fast. It's interesting to see these size differences. This is a Spanish release of Vampire Hunter D, and this is Vampire Hunter D released in the US. And it's nice that they do, you know, the embossing, the edge gilding, but you see, the ink hold is not the best on this. And it's not bad per se, but when you go back and forth and you go to this, you know, it really is jarring to kind of go in between. It just begs the question, are we being taken advantage of? You know, which is, that's kind of maybe exaggerating, but because we do get a lot of titles here, obviously, but for Spain to be able to pull off 100% high quality paper on all their releases it's insane. It's honestly insane that that could even be achieved. That not one of them has this, you know, newspaper type quality of paper. It's crazy to me. It's really crazy to me. You know, it just shows that it's not that much of an investment, so to speak. But, you know, like I mentioned, there are companies making that effort to print in high quality. And like I said, the best thing that we could do is support those and buy those releases, you know, if it does interest us, if we have money to do it. The trade-off is, of course, the size, but, you know, we don't get dust covers and the paper is just vastly different. It's kind of hard to tell on video the differences, but once you have it in person, it's just immediately apparent. You can see the difference in the finish, and obviously the weight is going to be different. That's 233 grams, 217. So despite being smaller, it is heavier, and even without the dust cover, it is about the same weight, but it is heavier still, which is interesting. Okay, so now let's get into Japanese releases. So in Japan, they of course have this smaller format, which is kind of the common thing. As you can see, they use kind of very economical paper. And I feel like with Japan, it's a little bit more forgivable because they are just coming out with manga like crazy, you know? And it's a different market. What I do love about Japan, though, is that they have a little stuff like this all the time. They have these little advertisements that they throw in there, as well as this thing called spine cards, which sometimes we get over here, but not always. And I would love to see if we got something like this, you know, in addition to a dust cover. I'm a video game collector, and there is this term that gets thrown around in video game called CIB, complete in box. Something that is complete in box, which basically means everything included. The manual, the advertisements, the inserts, the warranty card, everything is included, and it brings the value up to its maximum price. Anything that's incomplete is obviously going to be lower in price, and it's the same deal with these art books in Japan. Usually if they don't have the spine card, they're a little bit cheaper because, you know, it is like a little novelty and it does bring the value a little bit more. As a collector, it's more pleasurable and enjoyable to collect stuff that is complete, aside from the fact that you get like these beautiful additions to what is already something that is super beautiful, you know? I think it would be really cool to see that. I feel like if anyone would do it, it would be Spain. So in Japan, I don't have any on me, but in Japan, their special editions are called Kanzenbans. What I like about Spain and other countries is that they usually will model their special editions after the Japanese editions. Of course, they'll change the text to, you know, their native language, but for the most part, they try to preserve the original, you know, integrity of it. Obviously, as a result, it's very rare for Spain, for example, to come up with a special edition of their own. They did recently do that for GTO, where they announced a republication for GTO in a 2-in-1 edition, and they designed the cover themselves, and they did something that what the US tends to like to do a lot, which is pretty cool. I think it would be nice to see that come from, you know, other places that obviously take quality a little bit more seriously. I think US is excellent in the way they release their special editions. They come out with some beautiful editions. And you know, the US does also do that too, where they preserve the Kanzenban edition in their own style. They don't preserve the dust cover format, obviously. They convert it usually to what Viz does with their perfect editions with Monster and stuff, where they'll make it like a little flip out. You know, one thing that nobody has really brought here are pocket editions from Japan, which are kind of these like tiny omnibuses that they have. It's not all, you don't always see it, but they're very interesting, and I think that's more of a Japanese thing because Japan loves cheese-size stuff, you know, stuff that's small and cute. Obviously the US, which brings another issue, you know, like, oh, we think we need stuff that's huge, we need big editions, which is kind of true, I'm not gonna lie. I do like bigger editions better than, you know, smaller, chunkier ones, but it's interesting to note that. Let's talk about price. This is a great example. These are both the same size. And one has a dust cover, one doesn't. One uses higher quality paper, one's heavier. And this is only a couple dollars more than this retail. This is $12.99, and this is, I believe it was like $15 converted to euros, a little under $15. And it just kind of begs the question, again, are we getting our money's worth? Could we do better? Obviously, something like Dye Dark over here is $14 retail, but you get this piece that is just gonna last you a long time. It's just a pleasure to have. Another great example is Mexico. Mexico tends to have the same quality as the US, but they do not charge you crazy prices. They price it accordingly, and they're kind of mixed. They do have some manga in dust covers, some they don't have dust covers. You know, I'm not an economist or anything, so there's probably a reason as to what prices might be cheaper in Mexico or whatever, but it obviously costs more to make stuff in the US and all that stuff. But nonetheless, it is interesting to note that, you know, I'm definitely in the camp that if we have to pay a couple dollars extra more, I am all for it 100%, because something like this is just like, you know, it's nice, but like I mentioned, it's not going to last that long. And that is my video, the complete guide to manga quality. I think in the future I will probably expand on this a little bit more, but for now I think this is going to provide a solid foundation. If you guys want to hear my perspective on manga collecting and hear some of my tips, let me know in the comments and I will get to making that video. But like I mentioned, my goal for this video was not to devalue the manga that we have, because the most money that I have spent on manga has been on out-of-print manga, which anybody who collects out-of-print manga knows. Paper from back then is typically really bad. The majority of manga out there that is old is just yellowed like crazy. So I'm still going to continue collecting those and dropping a lot of money on that. And like I said, our box sets, our special editions, and the fact that we use coated paper where other countries typically don't use it is, you know, amazing. So I think we are are doing a lot of things right, and really we can probably make some improvements on singles and hopefully kind of normalize just having better paper so the manga that we buy doesn't yellow as fast, and it's just a much more enjoyable experience. Also too, people who don't have a lot of money to collect a lot of volumes at a time, it's just going to be better for them when they buy a manga volume and it's just this really high quality piece. But nevertheless, let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you think we should improve on, or if there's anything that I didn't catch in this video. I appreciate you guys watching this video. Shouts out to everybody on Instagram and on Twitter, and of course all the Discord fam. I love you guys, and I appreciate everybody who has supported me thus far. I'm about halfway through my first year, and you guys have just been awesome with your support, and I really appreciate that. Anyways guys, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.